You breathe 20,000 times every single day and you probably suck at it. So if you can only breathe up here in zone 1, these muscles are breathing you literally 20,000 times a day. We need to disperse that load to the diaphragm, this amazing muscle that was designed to help us breathe all day long. It was made for that. How do you know if you're not very good at breathing? Well, if your shoulders and your neck are super tight, you're probably breathing with these muscles all day long. If your shoulders physically come up when you take a breath, these muscles are contracting to breathe you. Another way to know is if your back hurts every time you lift something heavy up. That means you aren't using your breath to create a stabilization for your spine. Another way to know is if you pee a little bit every time you jump. These are just some of the ways, because really this is a foundation of moving well in your entire body. And it's about creating a solid canister with your breath. A great example to think about the canister that we want to make with our breath is thinking about a can of Coke. When that can is full of Coke, it's really extremely hard to break it, right? Whereas if the can is not full of Coke and it's empty, it's extremely easy to just crumble that whole can of aluminum in your hand. So we're going to talk about the anatomy of the diaphragm so that you can understand how to create this canister in your own body for efficient movement. So here's my buddy in our diaphragm example. The diaphragm is incredible because it is one of the only muscles that really transverses through our body. It connects to the front of our spinal column, coming off of the bones and the discs. And then it attaches all the way around the back of our ribs, so along the bottom ribs, ribs 11 and 12. And then it comes around the front and attaches to all of this cartilage here and then to the xiphoid process on the front of your chest. When we're breathing up here with our chest all the time, this is called zone 1 breathing. When we're breathing here with the middle of our ribs, this is zone 2 breathing. And when we're really breathing with our diaphragm and letting that diaphragm expand our belly, back, sides, and pelvic floor out, that is zone 3 breathing, okay? So let me show you a little bit about what zone 3 breathing really looks like. The diaphragm rests somewhere about right here, okay? It's elevated up in the body. And the right side is a little bit higher than the left because of our liver. So, none of us are perfectly balanced. We're all a little lopsided. Welcome to the club. The lungs fill with air and that pushes the diaphragm down like this into the stomach, literally pushing on your organs. When you get good at this, you will start to feel that you can stimulate your digestion by literal mechanical pressure, okay? And this can change your symptoms of GERD or acid reflux because your esophagus literally goes right through the diaphragm. So if it's too tight or too loose, it can change the function of the sphincter and let contents of your stomach come back up into your throat, which is no fun, right? So we breathe into the lungs, it pushes the diaphragm down, that pushes the belly, the sides, and the back out. And then as we exhale, that diaphragm comes back up, okay? And you can see here that I use these sleeves to show you a little bit of how the diaphragm connects into our spine. So it comes to the front of the spine, it attaches on the bones and also on the discs back there, which you'll start to be able to feel in your body. It's really quite trippy and cool, you guys. So we inhale, it comes down. We exhale, it goes up. Now you might be wondering, how is my pelvic floor related to this? When we inhale with the diaphragm and it pushes down, the diaphragm in the pelvic floor responds or should respond and also push down a little bit, okay? So these two places function together. And why this is so important is because when these two places function together, it maintains proper tone of these transverse muscles. When these muscles are too tight, we get issues where we can't hold our pee in our body when we jump because it's so tight and weak that it can't do its job properly of relaxing when it's supposed to and of tightening when it's supposed to, okay? When we take a proper diaphragmatic breath and we can feel it go all the way down into our pelvic floor, which go ahead and you can palpate your perineum down there and feel if you can get your breath to come into that region. When you're doing this properly, both of those places are expanded in an eccentric contraction, which just means you're not sucking in. It's not a Kegel. It's not sucking in the belly. That's not what's happening at all. You're using the breath to push out on those structures, and then the structures are gently, the muscles are gently contracting against the pressure you gave them into a proper tone. They're not just contracting against nothing, okay? So mostly ladies, let your belly relax, okay? We have bellies for a reason. It's okay. They need to be relaxed and soft so that your pelvic floor can work the way it's supposed to. So now I'm going to show you zone 3 breathing, or also called diaphragmatic or 360-degree breathing, where we're breathing into the whole lower globe of the torso, okay? It's really helpful to have something to put underneath your head, because when our head is extended back like this, it closes down the airway and makes it even harder. And you might hear my breath a little bit, but I want your throat to be as relaxed as possible. So I want you to try to make your breath as silent as you can, okay? There doesn't need to be sound, although I know us yogis are obsessed with ujjayi, which it isn't necessarily bad, but make sure you can do something else, okay? So I got a pillow under my head, so I'm nice and comfortable. You're gonna have your knees bent so that your pelvis is neutral, because I'm trying to create stability here, and to do that, I need my canister to not be blown open. And what I mean by that is when my pelvis, the plane of my pelvis this way, and the plane of my diaphragm this way are stacked, they're that super strong can of Coke. When they're opening or they're scissoring apart, we lose the efficiency in that pressure system, and it can't hold it together anymore. It's like a Coke can that isn't full of Coke and you can just squish it. So the pelvis is neutral. It's in line with the diaphragm, and even the roof of the mouth is in the same plane. So these 3 transverse planes in the body are all in a line, okay? Then I want you to make sure your belly is relaxed by just grabbing the skin and shaking it out. All around, all the way down to the pubic bone, even up into your sternum a little bit, because if these muscles are contracted and tight, like they are in so many of us, because we are obsessed with being thin in our culture, and so we suck it in all the time. When these are chronically tight, they will resist the motion we're trying to create in the diaphragm. They're antagonistic or fighting against the diaphragm. So it's really important that you can let your belly relax all the way. You're going to make a C shape with your hands, and you're going to put that C shape where the diaphragm is going to dome into. So if you remember back to our buddy, the anatomy model, it's all around the rib cage, and when it domes down with the inhale, it's going to press into the tissue that's just underneath the ribs and down into the organs, down into the pelvic floor. So this C shape is going to be just below your ribs in the soft tissue of your belly where the diaphragm is going to go. And then you're going to inhale and keep your chest relaxed and not moving. Really, your chest can go up towards the ceiling a little bit, but I don't want it going up towards your face, because that's a different zone of breathing. It looks like this. So I'm expanding the entire lower globe of my torso down and out. Okay. Some common things that I see when I teach this to clients is that the chest just comes up and you don't even notice it. A great tool for this is to take something with a little bit of weight, even your phone or a tissue box, not something super heavy, but just put it on your chest to give yourself a kinesthetic cue when the chest actually starts to move, or film yourself and watch, be like, oh, was I actually doing what I think I was doing? Another thing I see is that people get so excited about the inhale that they forget to exhale all of their breath out of their lungs. And while this doesn't seem like a big deal, you're gonna start feeling like you're suffocating really fast. and you're also making your blood more acidic, which literally changes the stoichiometry or the shape of all of the molecules that are around that blood. Let's keep our physiology in a restful state by getting all of that stale CO2 out of your lungs. So I want you to exhale a little bit longer than you inhale, okay? Once you've been doing this for a while, you'll start to notice maybe there's some places that you have a harder time breathing into. Part of this is normal because, as we talked about, the diaphragm is a little bit lopsided in itself. And part of it is that there's areas that we've kind of dissociated from, or it's harder for us to get our brain to connect to. So wiggle your fingers around in that area where it's difficult and see if you can get your breath to come back into the place that it's missing, okay? And the last thing here is that it's really important to stay present with your body and just do as many as you can do well, okay? It's not about doing 10 every single day. If you do 10 crappy ones, I'd rather you do none. What this is about is showing up for yourself with the level of presence it requires to make new neurological patterns in your brain. I would say you need to be doing this at least 2 times a day if you actually want to get better at it. And my favorite thing to tell people is do it in the morning when you're in bed and the night when you're in bed. It's an easy place where you're already laying down, and it helps get your nervous system ready for either the day or for rest. The question we always get asked about 360 breathing is, am I supposed to breathe like this all the time? And the answer is no, it's impossible. As you practice more and more, you will find yourself dropping into it without you having to consciously think about it. But it's not about breathing this way all the time. It's about giving your body other strategies to breathe. Now, when you're doing something like cardio, I do not want you only breathing down here because you have a higher oxygen requirement, and that means you need to breathe in more of your lung fields, and you're going to use zone 1 to breathe when you're doing something like running, okay? So it's not about all the time, it's about getting better at being able to drop in and use it as a resource. I definitely want you breathing like this when you're going to lift something heavy up, because it is a mechanically sound canister to keep your spine safe. Now, I know it feels super, super hard to do when you tried it first. If you haven't tried it yet, give it a try, and then you'll be like, oh wow, she was right. Because it is a new neurological programming of using our body. I remember when I was first learning how to do this, I literally thought I couldn't. That is not a rare feeling, and you can, okay? It just takes time. We talk about 360-degree breathing as the way to create this brace, but as you get more advanced, you don't need to actually use your inhales and your exhales every single time to create this stability. You can learn how to keep your diaphragm down, but take little breaths on top so that you don't have to be holding your breath to create the stability. This might take a while for you to figure out how to do in your nervous system, but it works.
AKA, it's a process, and don't expect it right away, but you'll get there.
And because it requires so much of our mental focus, we drop into the quiet place that lives inside of our body where our nervous system feels safe and like it can take care of our body instead of defending from the world around us. 360 breathing is a life-changing phenomenon if you can get obsessed with it enough to find it in your own body. And let me know when you do. I cannot wait to hear about it.